Good afternoon, and welcome to DLCV's Disability Rights Expo. This session is entitled Qualifying for a Social Security Disability Benefit. I'm delighted to have all of you here, and I would like this time to be about helping you understand the programs of Social Security disability so that you can better self-advocate. I'd also like to start by making sure you understand that we have several ways you can reach out beyond today to obtain more help regarding Social Security. We mentioned this in an earlier session, but I can't be sure all of you attended. One of those ways is to simply call us using our 800 number, 800-552-3962. If you call us on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you'll reach an advocate who will listen to your issue, and then we'll refer the case to the subject matter expert who can best answer those questions and provide guidance. If it involves Social Security, especially getting or keeping a benefit, things like that, then I would be that subject matter expert. So you would end up talking with me, and it won't happen that very moment, but within a day or two, I'll give you a call back and you can share your concerns and I'll help guide you at that time. Another way is to go online. We have a wonderful web page. In fact, we have wonderful resources in general. And you click on the resources tab on our homepage and then scroll down to Social Security, and you'll see numerous guides on all aspects of Social Security. They even talk, one of them talks about how to contact Social Security. But the other guides are really going to be focused more on how to get a benefit. You know, are you considering a benefit? Tips when applying, tips when appealing. We also have a guide on there related to, it's actually a video called Ask the Expert, and it's all about working and maintaining a disability benefit. So there's a host of resources there on that webpage. I strongly encourage you to look it over and find guides that relate to your particular situation. It's very user-friendly, and there's even links that take you straight to Social Security for applying and so on. So that's another way we help. And then last, I sponsor quarterly Social Security clinics. These are free and private, and we conduct them now mostly using a virtual format, such as Zoom, so that anybody can participate. And these are 60 to 90 minute private consultations that will go into greater depth on your particular concerns. So for example, if you're someone who keeps getting denied and doesn't understand why, or doesn't understand the appeal process, or doesn't even understand what it takes to get approved, those are things that we can dive into in a clinic session. So I encourage you to use that opportunity. And for that, you would just check back at our website periodically, and you'll see it posted. I think the next one may not be coming up until December. Okay, so let's talk about qualifying for Social Security. Basically, this is about what does it take to get approved. We had 3 questions that came in beforehand. Excuse me. I have some kind of a coughing problem today related to an allergy, and I apologize in advance. I may have to sip some water from time to time. Hold on. Okay, and so those questions really sum up what it is that I'm going to try and convey today. Basically, they want to know what are the best practices for filling out forms to apply. How can you successfully submit your claim on the first try? And then, you know, just basically, what do you need to become eligible? So basically, you need to understand what you need to prove. The definition of disability is basically that you need to have a medical impairment, and that's something that's very specific, a diagnosis. It's not just a set of symptoms, but rather something that has been worked up and determined to be a diagnosis. And that diagnosis has to be severe, which means that it has to prevent you from working substantially or over a certain limit. And then also, you have to be unable to work, okay? Unable really pretty much at all, particularly if you're under 50. So it can be harder to be approved if you're under 50, not impossible, but just harder. Okay, that's the basic definition, but there's also 6 steps that Social Security goes through when deciding a case. And those 6 steps we won't go through, but just so you understand that it's a very involved decision-making process, and they need to nail down everything before they can determine that somebody meets all these criteria, okay? One reason people are often denied is because there are inconsistencies in the record. And this is because you've told one doctor one thing and maybe another doctor another, or even in the forms that you're filling out, you may say things that don't add up. So it's very important that you present a consistent record. Now, you don't have to go out and get all your records and submit them. That's something that Social Security will do for you. As a matter of fact, DDS, or Disability Determination Services, will collect those records, but you have to educate your doctors so they know what to write in their records. Excuse me. Okay. So making sure that in all of the reports that there are there for you, that you're as consistent as possible with the information, okay? It's also important not to overstate your abilities. This is a time to be very realistic about what you can't do. They send a function form, for example, and they want you to tell what you can and can't do. Well, very important that you not underestimate these things you can't do. Excuse me, because you don't want to, convey the wrong picture. You want them to fully understand that while maybe you can cook some, there's lots of restrictions. And so don't just say, I can cook, say I can cook, but, and then explain. Also, I neglected to mention that one of the criteria is that the condition has to last 12 months or more. So they're really excluding situations where you might have a surgery and get better, or an illness and get better. Anything that's expected to get better within 1 month, or 12 months, would not be approved. Okay, so they're looking at really longer term conditions. So anything in the record that will clarify that this is going to be a longer term situation is better. Okay, now, because they're also looking for these automatic disability cases, they're found through the listings. You probably won't meet a listing. It's quite rare. But if you don't, then you have to prove that you can't do any work. As I said earlier, if you're under 50. If you're over 50, they do have considerations of work, your education, your past work, in particular. And so they'll look at all of those factors. But under 50, they're mainly interested in whether you can do any job in the entire national economy. Even if you've worked professionally, they're more interested in whether you can, work in fast food or at a Walmart or whatever. So, excuse me, the burden of proof is quite high. So your case really ultimately is only as good as your documentation. So it's very critical that you allege all of your conditions, okay? Even if you don't think they relate directly to your disability, things like asthma or diabetes, or, those may be the primary disability in your case, but those things may also just contribute. So be sure to state all of those conditions, and then be sure to provide the names of all the doctors you're seeing for all of these conditions so they can collect all of it. Um, and then be sure to list all of your medications and your side effects of those medications. That's very important because side effects can also contribute to your inability to work. For example, if you have a lot of fatigue or drowsiness after you take your medications, and that would interfere with you being alert and productive on a job, they need to know that. So be sure to clarify that. And again, it's very important to consistently educate your doctors of all your symptoms and your limitations, and so that they can accurately report to Social Security. Keep in mind, Social Security isn't going to call your doctor and say what's going on. They just send for their records. So you want to make sure your situation and your specific symptoms and limitations get into your records, and that's what you need to communicate. I recommend people make a log of their symptoms and bring that to each appointment. It's very important also not to miss appointments, because that suggests that you don't need help. It's also very, very important that you be seeing specialists, not just a primary care doctor, if at all possible. Social Security assumes that if you have a disability, you're going to likely need a specialist to be treating it. So very important that you get connected to a specialist. So, you know, if you've got rheumatoid arthritis, you need to be seeing a rheumatologist. And if you've got orthopedic problems, you need to be seeing an orthopedist. If you have mental health problems that disable you, you need to see a psychiatrist and therapists and so on. Okay, so let's briefly review the kinds of symptoms that you need to be reporting to your doctors and to Social Security. These are the things that make work difficult. Symptoms like shortness of breath, pain, fatigue, concentration, memory. If you're one that would have excessive absences or tardiness due to not being able to get up and out the door each morning in a timely way, you know, bouts of depression, for example, that are consistent and severe. If you're having trouble using your hands, with many conditions, that's the case. And hands are needed for so many jobs that if you had severe restrictions using the hands, you would want to make sure that's clarified. And anything that really affects your mind, both pain and fatigue and mental disorders can affect your mind and your ability to be productive on a job, following through, taking orders from a supervisor, being able to remember what you have to do, being able to work with a variety of people and do so properly, things like that. So those are the types of symptoms that you need to be making sure are very well clarified, and then how those symptoms limit you. So, you know, if you get drowsy after a medication, but it only lasts 10 minutes, well, that might correspond to a break time at work. But if you have to take a nap for an hour or two, that's going to interfere with work. So, you know, explain it as much as you can. It's also important to explain your work history and those things that have interrupted your ability to work. So if you've had several jobs in the past several years that have ended, you want to be sure to explain why they've ended. So for example, if you keep losing jobs because of these frequent absences, or you can't get along with your coworkers, or you have anxiety, and when you enter the workplace, you get very overwhelmed and you have to turn around and leave. You know, there can be all kinds of reasons why someone has trouble sustaining work. So if you've actually had jobs where this is the case and can document that, that can be very helpful information. And also good information to give your doctor. Because see, your doctor is just looking at your medical situation. They're not going to work with you. They're not even at home with you, which is why you have to take this log into them every time you see them. So just log what's going on at home, but if you are working, log what's going on at work. Okay, so think of it this way. You're trying to tell your story because all Social Security sees is paperwork. But you want to give this paperwork a face and a name and a person. You want them to read the material and come away and get the picture. Okay, anything you can do to clarify is to your advantage. Very important that you meet deadlines. Can't stress that enough. There is some lenience with the pandemic, but I wouldn't abuse that. And if you have to miss a deadline, for example, if they want to send you to one of their doctors, in fact, you could deny it based on COVID if you were afraid to be in an environment like that. But if it was just a question of being late or you can't make that date, you have to call them and let them know. They'll use, all kinds of reasons to deny somebody, okay? So then if you're denied, and I think with that, I need to help you understand, most people are denied. I say most, it may be as high as 80% of people are denied initially. Now, of course, they haven't listened to all this information, so you may be able to get your application in better shape than most. But if you're denied, you do need to appeal. And I can't tell you how often I get calls with people who say, well, I've applied 5 times and I keep getting denied. And when I ask, have you appealed? Well, they say, well, no, I didn't know how to do that, or I didn't even know I could. But it says right in the letter that you can appeal and that you can do so within 60 days. And so it's just really important that you follow up. And if you've applied online initially, you just go back online with your PIN number and go in and supply the additional information. If you applied in person or by phone, you can call and just get another appointment to appeal. And most appointments now, honestly, are being held by phone, and you have to call the toll-free number for Social Security to make those appointments. By the way, I can give you the toll-free number. It's 1-800-552 7121. No, I'm sorry. 1213. I'm sorry. 800-772-1213. I used to be able to say that in my sleep. Okay, so that's how you make an appointment, whether it's to apply or to appeal or really to do anything with Social Security. You have to call that toll-free number. Okay, and by the way, they're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and they allow you to leave your name and your phone number and usually your Social Security number, and they'll call you back if they're extra busy, which they are now with COVID, so be prepared. Okay, so again, appealing is so critical because I find that the more you appeal, the closer you get to being approved. And I know that sounds cruel. It sounds nonsensical that it would take you multiple attempts. But after all, this is a system where they have had to design it in such a way that it is rigorous to be giving out cash benefits. Even if you've paid into the system, they want to make sure you meet the criteria. So make sure you educate them. And if you do get denied, make sure you appeal. And you have to do so within 60 days, or you pretty much have to start over. A lot of this information about applying and appealing, again, is on our website. And it's actually in the tips when applying and tips when appealing guide. So you can go straight to those and you can read them and be reminded of what we've talked about today. So I'm going to stop right now because I know that was a lot of information, and I'm going to see if there's any questions. This isn't a question, but it's something that comes up a lot, is whether or not you need representation if your case is denied. Some people want to obtain representation from the beginning when they apply, but I can tell you that representatives, which include mostly attorneys, they don't take cases at the application stage. They only take cases after 2 denials. So if you've been denied once and then get denied again, that would be when you would get representation. And the Disability Law Center of Virginia, we do not represent people in a disability claim. And so that's something you need to understand. However, we can provide information on how to find a representative, because it's very important to have one. There are fees involved, but it's on contingency. So if the representative did not get your case approved, you would have nothing to pay that representative. And so it's basically nothing out of pocket. And then if they did get your case approved, it would be paid for out of the retroactive benefit for the time period you've been waiting. And there's a cap on the fee, so it doesn't get out of control. Okay, so that's something to consider, is the importance of getting representation. Any questions at this point? Okay, feel free to put them into the chat box. I'll go ahead and answer them as they come. Otherwise, we can also talk a little bit about what happens when you get a benefit. A couple things to keep in mind is, if you're successful in obtaining Social Security disability benefits, again, the benefits are not necessarily permanent. And so everybody is reviewed periodically. We're going to get into this more in the next session. But if you're reviewed, it's very important to understand that they're looking to see if you have medically improved. And so to know that, they're going to want to look at your records again, and they're going to want to collect from maybe the time period over the last year or two. So in the same way that it's important to go to the doctor regularly before you apply, it's also important to go after you're approved, because one day you're going to be reviewed and they're going to want to look at the records to see if you have continued with the same symptoms, the same limitations. Do your evaluations and other diagnostics and things like that show the same level of severity? And so in order for that documentation to be available, you just simply have to go to the doctor. So keep that in mind. Keep your case well documented. The other thing to keep in mind is that you can work while receiving a benefit. Now, I know that's maybe a little counterintuitive, because you just spent a lot of time and effort trying to prove you can't work. So why would they allow me to work? Well, the truth is, Social Security does assume that at some point you may be able to work, and that you should be entitled to try. Some people do in fact have a short-term condition, a year or two. The condition resolves and they're able to go back to work. So the benefit naturally ends at that point. But others need a longer period of time to learn how to enter or re-enter the workforce. And so Getting back into the world of work can be challenging. There are many resources to assist with that, such as the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services, or DARS, and also other groups that are called employment networks that help people with disabilities work. And so once you get connected to those organizations, there's a couple things that happen. One is you'll be getting a letter in the mail called a ticket to work. And this, again, is if you've been approved. It comes, after maybe 6 months or so. You can give your, quote, ticket to work to one of these agencies that are going to help you work. And if you do that and work consistently with that agency, your review will be waived. Basically, they'll postpone it because they see that you're making an attempt to go to work. So that can be a wonderful thing. And then also, even if you don't intend to work and then eventually let the benefit go, but just want to work to supplement your benefits, you can do that too. But you have to work within these limitations. And to understand those limitations, you need something called a benefits plan. Benefits planning is very important. This is what educates you about what it takes to work and keep a benefit. And in order to get benefits planning, if you work for one of these employment agencies, such as DARS, they will order a benefits plan for you. You'll work with somebody who will sit down and kind of crunch the numbers and say, if your benefit is this amount, then you can only earn X amount. If you earn over that amount, this is what will happen to your benefit. And they guide and direct you around the whole process and demystify it so it's not confusing. Okay, so I encourage you to get that kind of help. There's also a resource in Virginia if you're not working with an employment agency, but we just basically want help with the process. Maybe you're looking for work on your own. There are some other ways to get this kind of benefits planning, and you can call us and we can tell you more about that. Okay. So I think we're coming very close to the end of our time, if not at the end. Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm going to end by thanking you for coming and reminding you of our toll-free number, which is 1-800-552-3962. And you can call us on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you'll talk to somebody who will refer you to a subject matter expert on whatever topic you're calling about. If you happen to call on Tuesday and Thursday, you'll leave a message and the person will get back to you the following day. Okay, and you can also go to our website and email us through our Get Help, and you'll see that right on our webpage, which is www.dlcv.org. Okay, wish you well, everyone. Thank you so much for attending, and I sure hope this has been helpful.